Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is for those people who are involved in a relationship where one person is an Aries and one person is a Libra. I initially was just going to leave it as sun signs, but I think that you can see some of the same qualities with the moon. So any combination thereof, one person could have the sun in Aries and the other has the moon in Libra, for instance. It doesn't have to be both sun or both moon in these opposite signs. So that's the first thing that we want to talk about. These are opposing signs. Aries and Libra oppose one another. They're 180 degrees apart. In the astrological chart, Aries rules the first house of the self, and Libra rules the seventh house of committed partnership. So it's about me versus we. And when you have opposing signs, these are called complementary signs. That's another name for them. And that is actually, I think, a better term, because when you think of opposing, you might think that they're totally at odds with each other, and that's just not true. One reason they're not totally at odds with each other, even though they are 180 degrees apart, is because they have compatible elements. So Aries is fire and Libra is air, and these are both masculine signs, or they're both masculine elements, and these signs are both masculine signs, of course, and they're both cardinal signs. So the four cardinal signs each represent an element. There's Aries, there's Libra, there's Capricorn, which is earth, and there's Cancer, which is water. And even though they're quite different because they represent different elements, they have certain things in common, being of the same modality. That's what it's called, the modality of the cardinal modality. So what they have in common is that they are doers. They are they take action. So other signs, like, fixed signs, are the builders, or the how else can I put it? They're the ones who persist doing something. They take what the cardinal signs might initiate, and they, day after day, they're building, they're like repeating actions over and over again to put something into fruition, or, have it go into fruition. The mutable signs can be, they can change. Sometimes they might be more like the builder. Sometimes they might be more like the cardinal signs. I don't know if that's a good way of putting it. But one thing I can say, the mutable signs they come up with ideas. And this is one of the reasons having a lot of mutable energy myself is that I notice that mutable signs like to talk about what they're going to do, and cardinal signs do it. So cardinal signs take action, and this is something that Aries and Libra have in common, and that may not seem like a big deal, but it really is. I think especially with the cardinal signs, and the reason I say that is because I think that it can be very frustrating for cardinal signs to be with another sign that is more laid back, doesn't necessarily like to do things, maybe likes to chill. Like, I'm thinking of a Taurus that likes to sit on the couch and chill. They're perfectly happy doing their job and then coming home and, whatever. A cardinal sign, they just like to do. So even if they work 8 hours a day, they might come home and then they're like, okay, let's go and work out, or let's, go to that group, that meeting, or that club we belong to. There's always like that sense of action. And I think that can be very frustrating, to be that type of person and to be with a more passive individual. Or we can just say less active. It's really important not to kind of like take everything literally what I say, because I'm not saying that fixed signs don't work out, okay? I'm not saying they're just couch potatoes. But I'm talking about the mentality and the way that these different modalities approach life. A mutable sign person, they might want to do things too, but they're not necessarily that take charge. A cardinal sign person is really take charge. So both of these signs, even though Libra may give the impression that they are just like very cooperative, they're very concerned about what other people think, don't get it twisted. They like to take charge as well. But they try to be very, uh, diplomatic as they do it. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. So what do they, what are these two signs? What would they have in common, or what would be kind of the things that would draw them together? One of them is, again, being both doers, ambition, having a lot of maybe projects, and they might even have that in common where they might even have a project in common so that they would be bonded by whatever it is that they're doing. They're also both fun loving. I put funny loving. Funny looking, no. Fun loving and extroverted. And Aries is very like spontaneous, where it's like, hey, let's do this. Libra is probably going to be game. They're probably going to be, yeah, they're down for that. Both of them may be social. They like to socialize. I don't see either of these signs wanting to be alone. I think that masculine signs tend to want to be with others a lot. Yes, it is quite a broad brush, because it's just not true that's going to be the case 100% of the time. But in general, enough to, make it worth mentioning. And this is also a big deal that people don't tend to think about when they're getting involved in relationships, is that if you're an extroverted person and you're with somebody who's very like a homebody, that can cause tension or conflict, because one or both of the parties may want the other person to do what they're doing. So the homebody might say, why are you always wanting to go outside? Let's stay in the home. This is our home, especially if the person has children. The other person who's a homebody might think that, okay, now it's time to settle down, and the other person's like, I don't want to. And that can create conflict. Another thing is the person who wants to go to parties or wants to, have, like dinner parties or something. The other person might be really resentful. I don't want to go out. So both of these people may like to entertain. The Libra person really has a knack for socializing. And that can be quite good for the Aries person, who tends to be like a bull in the china closet. And, socially is where they're very blunt and that kind of thing. And it's not necessarily about the social graces. But the Libra person can balance them in that way. Intellectual stimulation. They're both intelligent signs. Libra, because it's an air sign, tends to be very involved with ideas, and sometimes this can be even with their career, being a teacher, professor, a writer, a like a lecturer, like a public speaker, that sort of thing. And Aries, obviously, they can do the same things, but Aries is just a very bright type of person in their own right, no matter how much education they have. And if Mercury is also in Aries, this can be somebody who's a very quick learner, who is, I think, just somebody who also has an enjoyment. Aries is fire, and fire is about enthusiasm. And so if they have a pet interest, they can talk about that. And I just think that Aries people, because they are so physically active, they might get kind of like under, I was going to say misjudged, but I'm thinking of like underappreciated or underestimated for their intellectual prowess. They may have a lot more of that than people think. And I was thinking about somebody like Marlon Brando, who I'm not really an expert on him, and I think I've only seen him in one movie, in Last Tango in Paris, maybe a couple of movies. But I've seen him in an interview. Now, he was kind of eccentric too, but I've read their interview. Watching the interview is a little bit challenging because he was kind of eccentric in the way he talked and everything. But when you read like an interview with him, he was a very thoughtful person, and he had like some very interesting ideas. And but he had like this raw. He was a double Aries. I think he had Sun and Moon in Aries. And like in Streetcar Named Desire, he just had this kind of palpable animal magnetism. And you don't think of somebody's mind under those circumstances. So that's where I'm going with that. And the thing about that is that it's more important than you think to have, if you're somebody who is intelligent, or we could just say intellectual, because people might think you have to be a member of Mensa to be intelligent. But if you're somebody who likes to learn, if you're somebody who likes to have discussions with others about about life, and some people are just into sports, and there's nothing wrong with sports. There's nothing wrong with all these TV shows or whatever, if that's what you're interested in. But if you're somebody who just loves the world of ideas, it's always nice when you can meet somebody that you can actually engage with them at that level. And I think that it is kind of a deal breaker if you consider yourself an intellectual and you're with somebody and you might be physically attracted to them, but you don't have it's not the whole package, because that can be rather one-dimensional, and the relationship can have a short shelf life, because the physical side of it is rather superficial at the end of the day. But Aries is ruled by Mars, and Mars can be the sex drive, and Aries is a highly sex sign. I would put them right up there. And Libra is a sign associated with beauty. So we can, this can go either way. This can be a situation where you have one person who is just like totally hot, like the Aries person totally hot for the Libra, but the Libra person is almost like in this kind of like state of, I'm searching for the right word, but it's like they might have this, it's not, it's almost like not even being sexy, being beautiful without being sexy or sexual. And I think that can be true. Oh, did I catch it when I said something like that before? And I didn't mean anything wrong. What I meant was that I think I was comparing Libra to Taurus, and both of these signs are ruled by Venus. But Taurus has an earthy kind of a quality that makes it more about the sexual angle, because the earth is connected to the body and these things like that, and there's more of that kind of above it all. I didn't mean to say ethereal, but there's another word that I'm looking for that has to do with the aesthetic side of life. Okay, and Libra is very into that beauty, but for the sake of the higher, almost like a spiritual, thing. And so there might not be with Libra a lot of that raw animal stuff. Remember that Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, so it's very immediate. It's very like, I made somebody laugh. I said like the bodice ripper, in the Harlequin romances or whatever, where, just this kind of the cliche of the, sexually passionate character versus the kind of that ethereal beauty that kind of is floating in the air that isn't really of this world. And is that necessarily sexual? And do these two people, are they on the same page with that? So that has to be one thing to look at. It's not to say that, oh, Libras hate sex. I mean, that's simplistic. But you can like sex, but you don't want it 3 times a day. You know what I mean? So that's where this could get tricky, because you could have somebody who's oversexed and somebody who just has, they put that area of life in its proper perspective according to them, and they think that this person is a little bit excessive. And so there could be kind of like an incompatibility in that area. Also, another thing is that Aries is very aggressive and even Aries can express their anger very, all of a sudden, very spontaneously. It doesn't take much, to trigger an Aries person. And this will be especially true if the moon is in Aries, where the person will be emotionally volatile. The sun in Aries, that can happen as well, but the person may exhibit more of the positive traits of Aries rather than the shadow traits. Libra doesn't like conflict. So Libra might, if Libra ever sees Aries, blowing their stack, they might be like just repelled and disgusted because they can't stand that type of behavior. They're always trying to make everything okay, and Aries is trying to upset the apple cart, even like for fun, even to like kind of like when they're bored, start a fight. What's the best way? Somebody might go online and start trolling as a mild form. This is taking it to a new level of kind of teasing people or trying to like provoke people. And Libra is trying to always smooth out the rough edges. And speaking of rough edges, Aries can be rough around the edges. Libra tends to be very diplomatic. Libra knows how to handle people. I think that's the best way of putting it. Libra people make great PR agents because of this. They can kind of like present somebody in a really good light. They're just good with that type of thing, and that's why they're popular. People feel good around them. Aries people can instigate, negativity within others because they tend to be very aggressive, bossy, and maybe part of that is being demanding, as well as, using the truth as a weapon, saying, well, it's just the truth. Saying something rude and then saying it's the truth. Well, unless you're 5 years old, it doesn't mean that you have to blurt something out. You have the ability to take a truth and keep it to yourself. You don't have to tell that person something. So sometimes I think that the Aries person's truth might even be vindictive in certain circumstances, where they might be 100% legit in what they're saying, but there's no need to say it. They're just saying it because they want to get back at somebody who they've made them feel a certain way. And that sort of thing is, I would call it very childish, but also very, very undiplomatic and rough around the edges. Not being able to conduct oneself with a lot of a polite type of demeanor. And just when I say aggressive, it can also be very pushy and even like refusing to cooperate with the other person. And that could irk the individual that is the Libra, who wants to be very cooperative. Aries might be very uncooperative. And so the other thing that kind of goes along with that is that Aries can be very genuine and, like an open book. And, what you see is what you get. But just showing who they really are. Libra people can be inauthentic. That's kind of a nice way of saying phony. Why does this happen? Well, again, Libra is a sign that is very much a people pleaser, somebody who wants others to like them, who wants approval. And Aries is like, I don't care, if anyone likes me. I'm going to do my own thing. So that's when I said uncooperative, compared to Libra being very cooperative. That can be a personality conflict that could have to lead to these two people possibly, even if they get together, having some sort of conflict where they don't see eye to eye and then they get divorced. And the nature of the opposition is, it's like a seesaw. You have one, extreme, and then you have the other. It's like going back and forth, and it has to be integrated. And part of that integration is being able to cooperate with that other person so that there's like a mutual thing going on. And I feel like that's kind of where they're at. But the other thing, let me see if there was something along the same lines. I just want to say one more thing about that, because I do believe this is a big one. The Libra person can make a good case that the Aries individual is rough around the edges, is too, brusque. That's kind of like an Aries thing, because Aries is impatient. So even when they're talking to somebody, if you've ever had a discussion with somebody who's brusque, they don't let you finish your thought. They just kind of interrupt and they say something just very quickly, and they want to move on. They don't like to discuss things like ad nauseum. They just really want to, cut to the chase. And that can come across as rude to some people because of the way that they go about it. They may even seem like they're not really listening. They're just kind of like, they just want to cut to the chase. And the Libra person is very diplomatic, is, trying to make the other person happy. But again, like I said before, this is kind of broad brush stuff. The truth is always going to be, the two people that are involved. And in some cases, even if it looks good on paper, it can be a no-go based on the two people involved. Or it can seem implausible that certain two people, are having this long relationship, but it doesn't matter. It's you know, the truth that counts. And there's that saying, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, or, you know, it's about the whole thing. It's not just about what's on paper or what logic tells you. It's how the people interact with one another. So, always keep that in mind when you're listening to these sorts of things, is that whatever you're dealing with this person, that's going to be true for you. And if you're having, if I'm saying glowing things about the relationship, and you choose to focus on those things, when in fact the person is completely wrong for you, then you should honor that. Only honor what is real for you. But if there's somebody that you're interested in that is one of these signs, and you're like the opposite sign, don't assume that you're not going to get along because you're opposing signs. That's not going to be the case in most cases. There's going to be more in common than different between the two of you, I would say. Okay, that's what I have for you. I hope that was interesting at the very least. If you would like a relationship reading where I compare two people's charts or information, if we don't have time of birth or any other type of reading, please check me out. The link is below. I'm at rainamoonastrology.com. Take care. Bye.